Hello everybody, my name is Kane. I've been a Rise of Kingdoms player for 5 years, a content creator for 3 years, and over the course of that time, this game has seen many changes. It is no surprise that the game Rise of Kingdoms was, or even Rise of Civilizations was in 2020, is not the same game that exists now in 2025. The pace of the game has changed, the mechanics of the game has changed, and honestly, it is still one of the best games out there, especially in the mobile market. But today we're going to talk about the reality of the game. This is not supposed to be a rant video. This is not a complaining video. This is not even a praising video, because I'm going to mention some of the good as well. This video is truly just to establish the state of Rise of Kingdoms in 2025, what I believe is hurting the game, or what I believe is helping the game. So without further ado, let's dive into it. To give it a little bit more context as to why I was having this discussion, I posed this question to my community, and I will have a link to my Discord channel down pinned as the top comment of this video. But essentially, I asked them, hey, what's the good, what's the bad, and what's the reality of Rise of Kingdoms? And we came up with this long list. I was hoping to get everybody's perspective, the whale, the R4s, the R5 of Kingdoms, the free-to-plays out there, and generally the people watching and consuming the content that is Rise of Kingdoms online. So how does everybody feel? And well, let's start with the good.
The good.
So at the very basic level, there have been a ton of quality of life changes that have happened, especially in the last 2 years or so in Rise of Kingdoms. One of them being material refunds for critted equipment. Now, it used to be none, so anything is better than nothing. I feel like they could take this a little bit further and give us all the materials back for legendary equipment. But now, if you did crit a legendary piece of gear, you can dismantle it for 100% of the refund value. Now, if you refined it to get there, you're not going to get all your refined materials back. So again, it's better than nothing. Next up, we have the armament system. So now you could argue that the armaments themselves are a terrible system, bunch of RNG, right? And I would just argue that, especially after dealing with it now for about 2.5 years, it's really just a numbers game. You pay money to have more chances, and eventually you'll get one of these things. This pity system, the ability to convert an armament to another type, is better. Guys, if you are just joining Rise of Kingdoms now, it used to be that you had to open this thing up. There was no transmuting, there was no re-rolling, there was no nothing. It was just you open the armament and you used what you got. So there are a lot of improvements that have come with this armament system. How you feel about the system is maybe another topic. Next up, we have the auto travels and auto dispatch and faster claiming of daily rewards and better nodes and stuff in Kingsland, right? Like, these things are good improvements that the game needed. You have higher level barbarian force, you have higher level barbs in Home Kingdom. This allows for a little bit quicker recovery than what it used to be when these barbs were only maybe level 21 to 25. Now they're anywhere from, 25 or 26 to 40, which is honestly quite good. And they give even materials in Home Kingdom now, which is solid. One thing that is not necessarily a change that's happened over the last 5 years, but is still one of the most impactful and influential pillars of Rise of Kingdoms, is that it is still a community-first game. You play this for the person besides you. You play this for your kingdom members, for your friends who are playing it. And now you can say you do that with most games, but I would argue that this game takes it to another level. You have to interact and work with sometimes hundreds of people at a time in these KVKs in order to get good, fun matchups. And that, in essence, is fun. Now, one of the more impactful changes that's actually been beneficial is the changing of crystal technology. Now, if you don't know what crystal technology is, think about it as a monthly, or I guess seasonal, battle pass that the player gets to choose how much they spend. And the more they spend, the more powerful they are for that given KVK, but it resets every time you go into KVK. So you can spend anywhere from $0 and be at a relative disadvantage, or spend up to literally $1,000 on crystal technology and have a pretty large advantage over the other players. What this change essentially did is it slowed down the game. It took a bunch of attack stats out, it took a bunch of all damage stats out, and so the game is essentially roughly 33% slower. This also gives lower spenders and free-to-play players the opportunity to make mistakes and not feel like they're getting completely run over on the field. But this comes with some downsides, and this is where we're going to transition into the bad. So with this new technology and with the game slowing down, it creates elongated fights. What I mean by that is fights last literally twice as long in some cases because it's harder to burn flags, it's harder to burn forts, it's harder to make progress. And so when you can last through your downtime and come back the next day and go again, it takes a long time to get stuff done. And so essentially, it's more expensive to play the game. So you are spending more speed ups, you are spending more resources than you ever have before because the game is slower. I know that sounds almost counterintuitive, but there are more like 4 to 5 day zone 5s in Kingsland than I have ever seen like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, your average zone 5 fight would maybe last, I don't know, 5 to 10 hours. It really was not that long. And now I was playing at a little different level, but you got to understand that the changes have really slowed down the pace of Rise of Kingdoms. Another thing is there's been no speed up increase to battle that change. So you still generate the exact same amount of speed ups as you used to. Now, I did say that there is a slight bump with the barbarians in Home Kingdom. That is true. There is a slight bump with the resources in Home Kingdom. That is true, but not nearly what is needed. Another reason why the game is becoming so much more expensive despite the slowing of the crystal technology and the pace of the game is because people are becoming way more developed with their commanders. You can see here, I've got ridiculous gear. It used to be only that you could get legendary gear that crits. Now you get iconics, 5 levels of iconics, armaments, and not only that, but the power creep of these commanders is absurd. I used to be fighting with like, Guan Yu, Alex YSG, Sargon, I guess, but Constantine, right? Khan, these kind of commanders with only level 1 epic gear and level 1 legendary gear, right? That was it. Now you've got these ridiculous levels of commanders that, quite frankly, just completely outpace the other ones. Especially with this commander, QSH has completely destroyed everything that came before it. If you don't have this guy finished, you are just sadly not nearly as relevant in the field or even other game modes like Ark of Osiris, Canyon, etc. So by releasing these commanders and having people get more developed armaments and gear and all these systems, they again make this game more and more expensive. Now, how does it become meta to combat these resource problems, these speed up problems? Well, this is something that I'm going to call whale stacking. So this isn't really a surprise. Kingdoms like 1960 or 2377 have done it before. But the reality is that it is now better than ever to get as many high spenders in one spot as possible. It's no longer about like taking the hardest fight or enjoying a community. And I'm not saying that these kingdoms don't enjoy their communities. Please don't take it that way. But with the autarch system and the amount of gold chests that these kingdoms receive, it's like a duplicative factor. You essentially get more gold chests for providing more gold chests. And so the low spenders and these other kingdoms really are not experiencing these large income of gold chests because they're all stuck in like the top 5-10 alliances in the game. And now if you are a top end player and you are not in one of those, let's say 5 to 10 kingdoms in the game, then you are really putting yourself at a disadvantage when comparing yourselves to other players of your caliber. And that feels bad. Now, if you are not in one of these kingdoms, which the majority of players are not, then you do something called barbarian forts. And I mentioned earlier, there was a slight buff to the level of these forts. But the main generation from the speed ups comes from your treasure of the whatever crystal you have unlocked at that time. There was no change done to this when they changed the barbarian fort system. I think that the speed ups that you get from this crystal chest should probably be even doubled. This is where the vast majority of most people's speed ups come from in the off season, because most kingdoms don't get anywhere from 20 to 30 gold chests a day. They might get 1 or 2. Another reason why kingdoms are whale stacking or even just farming freer wins is because of something called the autarch system. This is a system that was implemented probably 2+ years ago. In fact, it says 23/5/30. So May of 2023. And essentially, if you win KVK, but not only win, but also get the star, you get one of these autarchs. The winner of the star has something like 240 of these available to them, while even the winner, but not the winner of the star, only gets 60. And that feels really, really bad. It makes it so that winning doesn't really feel like winning. It feels like, you know, a good old Ricky Bobby quote, right? If you're not first, you're last. It really does not feel good. So again, it creates the system of everybody get as stacked as you can in one spot, become unbeatable, and farm them as quickly as possible. Next up, we have the matchmaking system. Now, the matchmaking system feels like the bane of especially my existence in the last few months. This whole game revolves around KVK. It doesn't matter how many like good quality of life changes there are, doesn't matter how expensive the game is, it only matters how I can play the game. And if your matchmaking system is not placing you into fair fights that are fun to play, then the game is unplayable. And the last 6 months, at least for me, again, I'm trying not to make this a rant video, but at least from the perspective of 1981, has been really unenjoyable. You go in, you spend hundreds of dollars a month, and then you realize that the KVK that you're playing is gonna suck. And you can see it with your own eyes. It's not hard to tell. You have some of these crazy whale-stacked kingdoms, for example, who get matched against normal kingdoms, and it's just not even remotely fair. Now, I'm not even blaming the large-end kingdoms for queuing. I don't think it's their fault. They should be able to queue and register and have faith in the system that they're gonna get a fun and fair match as well. Now, fortunately, I just got a KVK match and the kingdoms seem fairly balanced. It seems like it's enjoyable and the players can look at it and say, okay, this looks like fun, I will play. But it has become a sense of even anxiety when matchmaking is happening, no longer excitement. And that, I believe, is definitely an issue and needs to be worked on by Lilith. And lastly is the lack of kingdom management tools. There's no reason why we should still be using external sources for things like kingdom scans and resource trackers and all this stuff. And again, this was actually another quality of life change, is you can see your speed ups and your resources that you have in bag. This is great. Awesome change. This is used every day by me when I track my speed ups. But like kingdom scans, for example, just looking at these kingdoms, I would have no idea, absolutely no idea how their matchmaking value is and their kingdom kill points and their power, right? And even the vacation permits, because that's another tool. You can give AFK players, you know, a vacation permit so that they don't count towards matchmaking. But the scans that the players have come up with essentially still include these vacation permits, so nothing's really accurate. You don't know what these kingdoms really bring to the table because there's nothing in-game that says it. So we have to rely on external sources. So those are some of the bad things that at least myself and my community believe are occurring in the game right now. But if you actually wanted to play this game at the highest level, at a competitive nature, what is it actually like? And that leads us to the reality. Within this last year, there have been a massive shift into something called piloting in Rise of Kingdoms. With the shift in competitiveness and with the shift in cost, it has basically made it obsolete for you to play your own account and not spend money on it. So what would you do? You go ahead and you sell your account and then you start piloting for people who will pay you money to do so. This has created a large imbalance between a pay-to-win and a free-to-play competitive level. There used to be this balance between the free-to-plays and the whales in Rise of Kingdoms, where generally the less you spent, the more time you had to play the game. And the more you spent, well, you were probably a really busy person in real life, and thus you would have less time to play the game. And so you kind of had this balance where, okay, you had your grinders, and then you had your whales who kind of helped funded the kingdom. And now I will go ahead and try and, make a graph here for you that shows exactly what I mean, but eventually you would have these unicorns, right? Which are these people who would spend a lot and play a lot, and those people were really, really valuable, but also it made it so that if you were a big whale, that didn't automatically mean that you were good at Rise of Kingdoms. And so essentially what this means is you had to play the game to be good at the game. If that makes sense. I feel like that makes very logical sense. There wasn't a just method for you to pay somebody else to play the game for you. And I understand that boosting and piloting is in every competitive game. This is not just a rock problem, right? There is a market for it, so there will be a supply for it. And so now your unicorn players that I was describing earlier feel worse about spending money and playing the game because they're thinking, well, why should I even play this game if the people that I'm going to be playing with are just a bunch of people from other kingdoms who aren't actually the people I enjoy talking to? This isn't fun. And so now it seems like you're being punished as somebody actually playing the game for somebody who is just doing everything meta to win at the game. And let me remind you, you have to win at this game, which is why it's so competitive. If you do not get that autark or you do not win, then you have just wasted hundreds of dollars and possibly 3 months of your time before you have another chance to do it again. It's why losing feels so punishing, and this piloting meta has really started even for people who didn't traditionally want to use pilots. And let me be very clear. This is not just a top-end Mega Kraken issue. This is also affecting more common kingdoms like A seeds or B seeds, because if you are not using pilots, you are losing to them. There are still free pilots. There are kingdoms helping kingdoms. 1981 is guilty of it. I'm not saying that we're not guilty of it, but we do it because we have to. And so while there has always been an obvious gap between pay-to-win and free-to-play players, the big thing about Rise of Kingdoms, and I will say this one more time, is that it really was friendly to the free-to-play grinding player. I know it might not have seemed that way, but compared to other mobile games out there, I promise you there were a ton of ways that a person spending a lot of time in Rise of Kingdoms could catch up to somebody who is spending a lot of money. Now it is completely shifted to anyone who is spending more money can have their account running 24/7, can have way more speed ups, be way more useful to their alliance without ever even logging into the game. So enough of the piloting. We've talked about piloting, we understand it, it's common in Rise of Kingdoms as of 2025. What's the other problem? The other problem is the new player experience. There have been so many systems that we have talked about already in today's video that a new player just gets overwhelmed with. And it costs thousands of dollars to catch up to players of, let's say 3 or 4 years. And so what happens? Well, those accounts that were being sold by those grinders who are now playing whale accounts are being bought by new players, and it's ruining the new player experience. There is no catch-up mechanic. It is infinitely more cost-effective to go and buy an account than it is to make your own. And not only that, but at the very highest level, you have these accounts that are getting passed around from KVK to KVK. So you buy it, you use it, you get rid of it. It's like a car that you use for literally a day. And this buying and selling meta of accounts has created a real issue because we don't know who's a good player anymore. Like I said, ignore the whale, ignore the pilots, ignore all that. At the very base level, you should be able to click on an account and say if that player is a good player. And nowadays, you can't. You can't. Literally just this last KVK, 1981 must have had anywhere from 10 to 15 people migrate and sell their accounts, or sell and then migrate the account. It is honestly pretty ridiculous how prevalent that is. And not only that, but it causes a massive headache for the leadership because you have these new owners and you don't know if they're good and you got to see if they can stay in your kingdom, but then they sell again and now you have to do this process all over again. And it is a hassle for leadership, and it's one of the reasons that I stepped down. Okay, deep breath. Like I said, trying not to make this a rant video. There are obviously some things that I am more passionate about than others. I think the thing that I am most passionate about is the health of the game. I want the game to survive, and so let's recap everything that we've talked about today. The good. Crystal technology changes, which allow troop specialization. It is debatably more friendly for the free-to-play player if they can only find themselves investing into maybe 1 or 2 troop types. There are a ton of quality of life changes, things like material refunds, armament upgrades, your auto travels and auto dispatches, you've got faster claiming of rewards, you've got all this very nice stuff. You've got your quick command and combat optimization. The mobile experience has become a lot better, as well as the significant decrease in lag in open field fights in Rise of Kingdoms. It is still a community first game that centers around the people that you play with, and that is the utmost important factor. And lastly, we have the increase in levels of the barbarians, barbarian forts, and the resource nodes in Home Kingdom, allowing for slightly increased resource production and speed up production. And now let's move on to the bad. We have the crystal tech changes that create elongated fights, causing more and more resources to be used than ever before. You've got commander power creep causing more damage, causing more speeds and resources to be required than ever before. You also have that commander power creep nullifying old school investments. You have no steep increase in speed up generation during your off season to combat the increase of need when you are fighting. And you also have the whale stacking technique that is encouraging people to get as many high spenders in one alliance as possible so that you get your autarch as fast as possible, which also sometimes leads to poor matchmaking or free wins. We have the lack of the faith in the matchmaking system, believing that when you register, you're not going to get a fun or fair matchup. You also have a shortage of kingdom management tools. There is no need to rely on external tools to provide basic in-game information. And lastly, not winning an autarch, but winning a KVK still feels like losing, and that should be changed. And the last thing we spoke about was the reality, which was the paid piloting services and groups and just the overall aspect of the game. It is now a use it or lose to it vibe. You've got the research purchasing, you've got the account purchasing, which honestly stems from the fact that the new player experience is so poor that you cannot fathom making a new account without spending thousands and thousands of dollars. It is impossible to catch up to these older accounts unless you just outright buy an account, and it's much cheaper if you do so. And the big one is the emphasis of money is now greater than your effort or your skill that previously existed in Rise of Kingdoms. It has shifted, the pendulum has swung to be way more in the favor of money than it ever has recently. So where does that leave us? Do I think that they should ban piloting? Should I think that they should ban account purchasing? Should everything go back to the way it was? Can it even change? My answer to that is probably not. I think that now the game has just changed. It's evolved to where you can't really just outright ban piloting. Now, I think that what they should work on is trying to reduce the benefits of piloting by making it so that losing doesn't feel as bad, or making the account purchasing less attractive by making the new player experience a little bit better and adding better catch-up mechanics to the game. I think that they should not necessarily change the pace of Rise of Kingdoms, because I love long fights. In fact, what you have on the screen right now is a 4-day Kingsland. This is insane. It's between WIB and 2359. This is awesome. Like, this is what I want to see in the game. But make it feasible, right? Make it so that I don't have to spend thousands of dollars to get to this point. So give me a little bit more resources and speed ups in the late game or in the off season, right? Like, that would just help. That would help a lot, and I think it would go a long way. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video of the state of Rise of Kingdoms in 2025. Please leave a like and comment. Give me your thoughts. Again, this is not intending to be some complaining video. This is not just me thinking that Rise of Kingdoms is dead. I want to give you guys the honest truth of what's going on in this game, and I think I did a pretty good job of it. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.